This video is designed to show why negative numbers times negative numbers come out the way they do. So in class we're talking about how to multiply by a negative. So let me just use the number -2. So if I have -2 3 times, by repeated addition, I see that that's -2 plus -2 plus -2, and having -2 3 times gets us a lot of negatives. You get a total of 6 negatives, and you know, I could pick some other number like 10, and I wouldn't have to draw them all, but I've got -2 and -2 again, and I've got 10 of these things, but they're all negative. And really what I have is 2 10 times, but no, they're -2 10 times, but bottom line, I have 20 of these negatives running around. So that's great. But it's hard to think of what I could possibly mean by even having -2 -1 time. It just doesn't really resonate, at least with me, what you could possibly mean by having something a negative number of times. So instead, I'm going to look at a pattern. And the way that mathematics works is things go the way they're going, or everything gets messed up. And what I mean by that is if you see a pattern forming, it's probably going to continue even beyond where it makes sense to you, where the pattern's coming from necessarily, but the pattern continues. So I'm going to start multiplying -2 by things. So I'm actually going to go like this. I'm going to go -2 times 3. Well, that's -6. We already did that one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by -2 smaller and smaller number of times. So I'm going to go -2 times 2 rather than 3, and that's going to be -4 because 2 of those -2's is total -4. -2 times 1, that's just -2. And then -2 times 0, well, that's straightforward. That's just nothing. You know, anything times 0 is nothing. And what I'm ultimately trying to get to is, well, what the heck is that? And what the heck is that? And etc. You know, how do I do this negative times a negative? And instead of trying to reason out what it means, I'm going to look at the pattern. And the pattern is, every time I go down a line, I'm actually going up by 2. And we looked at patterns in the past, and we said, okay, here's your sequence of numbers, -6, -4, -2, 0. What's the pattern? In this case, the pattern is you're going up by 2 each time. Going up by 2 each time. And this is potentially difficult to see, so let me look at it on a number line. It's a little bit easier there, and I'll come back to this in a second. So if I look at a number line, and there's 0, and there's -2, and there's -4, and there's -6, and there's -8, and there's 2, 4, 6, 8. If I'm starting here at -2 and making these jumps each time, see, yeah, I'm going up by 2 each time. The number is getting greater and greater by 2, whether it was -6 that I added 2 to it to get -4, or maybe it was 0 that I added 2 to it to get 2. Regardless, going from one place
to show how to subtract fractions with.
Sorry about that. The other video that I just made just uploaded. It started playing automatically. So anyway, so I'm going up by 2 each time. So let me go back here. If I continue to go up by 2, well, then I'll get to 2. And 2 more, I'll get to 4. And 2 more than that, I'll get to 6. You know, if I continue this pattern of going up by 2 each time I go down this line, there's the numbers that come out. And what that kind of helps us to see is that, oh, when I'm multiplying numbers where some of them are negative, if for a second I just go, oh, that's 2 times 3 is 6, forget about the negative for a minute, or over here there's 2 times 2 is 4, and forget about the negative for a minute and just multiply the numbers, and then look at, oh, 1 negative times a positive keeps it negative, and that was true all the way here. But if I have 2 negatives, it ended up a positive. 2 negatives ended up a positive. 2 negatives ended up a positive. And that's the deal. When I'm multiplying, of course 2 positives multiplied together gets a positive. I have a positive thing a positive number of times. But if only one of them is negative, doesn't matter which one, if one of them is negative, I'll get a negative. But if both of them are negative, this is the one that's the hardest to really understand. If both of them is negative, I'll end up with a positive. And that's what you take to the bank.